Hey, what's up? It's Kevin Rogers. Welcome to Copy Chief Radio, brought to you by copychief.com. See how that works? Let's get into it. What's up? Welcome to Copy Chief Radio. You made it back. Good for you. Where are you at right now? Are you at the gym? Are you walking the dog? Are you driving in the car? What is on your mind? We want to appreciate you for a second, giving us over the ear hole. I don't take that lightly. I'm probably stuck right in your ear right now, my voice, which to me is a privilege and an honor. I'm not joking. I'm not being sarcastic. The fact that you would give over your time and your brain to me in negotiation that I will do something useful with it, it means a lot to me and I appreciate it. And I think today you're going to be rewarded on a high level because we're going to talk about that moment in life where you decide you want something and you go for it. And let's not take that lightly. If you're successful, especially if you're an independent business owner and you've reached a level of success, you probably are too busy to sit back very often and appreciate those moments where you made the leap. You made the big leap and you went for it and you were scared and you sacrificed and now here you are. Congratulations. Many of you listening may be on the other side of that and you're sitting there going, man, what do I do? What is the leap? Where do I go? And you're surrounded by instruction and advice and opinion, and it can be really overwhelming to know what to do next. And so today, I want to focus on that moment and how you make those decisions and how much of it can and should be calculated and how much of it needs to just be ready, fire, aim, caution to the wind. And to do this, I can't think of anyone better than one of my best friends in the world, a guy I've known 30 years, and spent a lot of years traveling the country with when we were both stand-up comedians. This is a guy that when I was 23 and wanted to move out of Florida to the big city of Chicago, this man put me up on his couch and introduced me to the local scene and helped me get auditions at clubs. And in a lot of ways was there for me when I was making one of my big leaps. And here we are many years later, both of us reflecting back on our triple decade experience as freelancers, which is what we were as comics, if we think about it. And now I'm thrilled beyond explanation that Mike is back in my life and we're working together shoulder to shoulder again, now in Copy Chief and RFL and some other programs. So Mike, thanks for being here, brother. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Thanks, Kev. I feel like you're now putting me on your couch for a couple of weeks, taking me under your wing at Copy Chief and teaching me the art of copy. And
funny how that works, isn't it? Like
it all comes back.
Yeah. And Mike, you and I were talking earlier about how you and I were, we were really close and we did a lot of things together. When I think back, like our time in Chicago, and just to give everybody some context, it's 1993. I moved to Chicago. I'm a long-haired rock and roll comic. That was my little hook, right?
You were a little bit angry too, Kevin. Yeah. You had a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. We're not sure why exactly, but there was an edge.
That was the joke on me. It was like, what's Kev pissed about? He grew up, he's like, his parents love him. Like, what's the problem, He's tall, he's handsome, he's got it all. That's not enough. I want to be pissed too.
That was the era of comedy you came from. A lot of the guys who you hung with had that same chip, Tom Rhodes and Bill Hicks, who was one of your idols.
That's right. Yeah, I guess it kind of was almost that thing where it was like that was the style, especially in Florida. We prided ourselves on never being what we call in the business a hack. You weren't allowed to do anything derivative of another comic or those things, right? But anyway, you, Mike, were ahead of me. I think like sort of in your advancement, you were already living in Chicago. You were the first time I ever was in a room with you. You were, I want to say, the feature act when I was, maybe it was the other way around. Maybe I was working. I know what happened. Here's how it went. I was gigging already, but you had just won a contest. You remember this in Orlando, dude? And you were amazing, bro. And I think I remember. Here's what it was. I was the feature act at a club in Orlando, and Vicky Rausman was holding like a competition, and she asked me if I would be a judge, right? These comics. And I'm like, that made me feel like a big person already, right? Because I was pretty new. I was like 2 years in. This was early, one of my first gigs, road gigs. And dude, you were like amazing and clearly the standout of that group.
I remember that night too. That was the Comedy Zone up in Winter Park.
That's right. And dude, I'm a year and a half, 2 years later, you're gigging like fast. Things are happening fast. So I just wanted lesson number one. It's the first time I remembered that she asked me to be a judge. I think that was the first time I was ever in my life put in any kind of position of authority.
Yeah. Well, because you owned that stage when you were up there, and as a contestant in the contest, I mean, you were a legitimate judge to us. I mean, you were a working comic. You had a hotel room.
That's about all I had, probably.
You had a place to smoke weed where you couldn't get caught afterwards, even if you don't smoke.
So for me, we both excelled quickly as young comics, but you and I were pretty different. What I remember about you, by the way, we're not just going to have you sit here and listen to us tell old stories as if you're, indulge us, but there's going to be a lot of lessons here. And one of the things we're going to talk about is how comics get work. Because think about it, like any comic you enjoy, you see on Netflix, you see on HBO, wherever you see them, Comedy Central, they all had to go get gigs or you wouldn't be seeing them at all. The only way to develop as a comedian is on stage.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to write jokes and do those things, but in front of a live audience is the only way you develop. So Mike, how did you start working? How did you go from a guy in a contest to getting paid?
Well, one of the big things I had to my advantage was my day job at that time was at first in MGM Studios. I was on stage every day doing a show there, actually several shows, but I had a microphone and I was talking to an audience, and I was really learning my craft without really doing a lot of jokes, although I pushed the edge on a lot of the, one was called Superstar Television, and I'd bring volunteers up and have them in the show. And so I would riff with these people, and call out their overly large sunglasses and, talking about, this old woman was, just working on a welding project, putting up a new exhibit, but we're going to let her go on this ride and stage. And the trainers were horrified because it's like, you're too outside the box for Disney. But I was really learning the craft of holding a microphone in front of people. And then I went to Universal Studios, and I was also doing a year there, and I was doing a bunch of different roles. And what I always say to people who are starting out in sort of any kind of freelancing thing, the advantage of having a day job that's sort of what you're trying to do, but not exactly, it just gives you a chance to practice those skills that you would, like what you're saying, you have to be on stage to practice holding a microphone and being comfortable with that and not looking like it's the first time you've done it. Just the simple act of taking it out of the mic stand and holding it in front of your face. I remember for the first 6 months until someone told me not to, I was touching the microphone on my chin. Because I thought that was a good way to keep, to keep it close. And someone's like, dude, you can't do that. You can tell what you're doing. When you turn your head, it's still on your chin. It looks ridiculous. And and so figuring out how to do a day job that's related to what you do was so important for me. And by the time I got to Chicago, when you saw me, I was already working because I had begun during that day job in Florida. At night, I was just touring all the clubs. I was just getting out and just driving and doing open mics and showing up. That's the big thing. You have to show up.
Show up. Yeah. And that was the thing. It's like, man, you think about it. Okay, you somehow think you're funny. Somehow this is confirmed on some level. You then grow the courage to go to an open mic. I bet you and I know I do remember making that phone call to book my first open mic. I'll never forget, right?
I would like to get on your stage if that's possible. Yes, I've done a bunch. I'm like,
and nothing else enters your mind until that moment, right? It's like the greatest fear imaginable. So, and then, okay, great. So you do okay. So you decide to keep at it. And somehow now, then you got to figure out, man, how do I make this my life? I don't want to do anything else. I will sacrifice the better advice of my parents, anyone who cares about, for the first 3 years that I was on the road getting paid as a comic, every time I'd call my dad, he'd go, "You going to look for a job when you get home?"
He didn't get it yet.
He still didn't.
Yeah, this is my job. This is it.
Right. Didn't see it as a thing, And so what is that process of you got to go get gigs? And so what we used to have to do, Mike, is I don't know how it is for the kids today.
Oh,
but
so different.
Yeah, there was no YouTube. There, now
there was no cell phones when we were first starting.
Oh, Jesus!
No, if you had a cell phone, it was the size of a shoe.
You were a spy of some kind, yeah.
Right? Hold on while I hook this into my car.
Yeah, it had one of those coily, cords on it. Yeah, no GPS. I mean, I don't know how we got around or ever met. I used to meet my friends on the road. How did I know their numbers or where to call them? They were traveling. It's insanity. I don't know how we did it.
I'll tell you how, because they had a home phone with a voice recorder hooked up to it, and you would call that, leave them a message, and they would call back and listen to it later, and then go, oh, I got to remember to call Kevin back because he's going to be coming in town.
That's right.
It was very complicated, but that was a difference, man. No matter what your technology is, and even back then, I was on the phone all the time. It was not about just doing shows at night. It was about setting up your shows and thinking 1, 2, 3 months ahead of time on that calendar.
Yeah, you're right. You had to book yourself. You had to be your own project manager.
Yeah.
One thing I remember about you very, very distinctly, Mike, I want to say we were in Little Rock, Arkansas. And just to give everybody context, oftentimes when you do a gig, you don't stay at a hotel, you stay at the comedy condo.
Woo!
And condos are their own. We could do a whole show just on condos. But if you've watched, Louis or Crashing, shows like that, there's great scenes in those shows about comedy condos. Never use a condiment. Like never.
Oh.
My buddy Lou he'd walk into a condo and empty the fridge of its condiments. Mayonnaise first, right?
Nope. I don't trust any liquids in this area. Someone might have added other liquids to it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
No ketchup.
It's disgusting. Yeah. So you and I were in a condo and living the good life. And I remember, man, this is how I knew we were sort of different performers was to me, I in my mind, it was like, how close can I get this to how Jim Morrison might have felt, right? Like I'm a rock star, like I'm mysterious. You don't know how I make this magic, right? And I had this whole routine, like 2 hours before the show, I want to apologize to anybody who ever stayed in the room next to me in a motel because I had this giant boom box and I would crank music and I would blow dry my hair and, I had this whole routine. And then I would get to the club. And in my mind, when the Doors movie came out years later, I was like, yes, that's it. That's what was happening in my mind, And I remember getting up and whatever time I woke up, 2 PM or whatever, and you're in your room, you had a recorder and you were watching your tape from the night before, your set from the night before, and you were logging the material and you were actually doing this crazy thing called work. You were working on your craft.
Yeah, I was trying desperately to be a writer, but the problem was with me is I had all the effort and intent, but I just didn't know what the heck I was doing. Like I was trying to study those films, like from a head coach of an NFL team, and I'm trying to look at what I did last night because I didn't do premise setup punchline kind of stuff. I did a lot of improv. I did a lot of I would create a scenario and then I would act out an inanimate object in their voice and their personality. Like I did a big bit where my bed was trying to seduce me back into the bed in the morning. Michael, I want you in me, that kind of, and it was a conversation back and forth. Yeah. And I would just, that was my kind of stuff. So I couldn't just really, I didn't know how to just sit down and write that. I had to sort of perform it and have it come out. And then I had to watch it. And then, like you said, log it and then try it again and then build on it each night. So it was a really like a difficult process to do, but it was necessary. And thank God I did it because that's how I built a lot of my bits because they would start off with a one line and then you would add to it and rewrite it. And then you'd watch as it grew. And then by the time, that bed seduction bit started as that one line. And then it turned into one of my, big premiere pieces that I would use and it would get an applause break.
Yeah. I love that about you, that you would just take a chance on stage because to you it wasn't interesting if it wasn't real and in the moment. Like nobody ever came to one of your shows and thought for a second that this was all rehearsed or you were a guy just going through the motions. I mean, it was for better or worse. This shit was happening now. Some suspected
I didn't rehearse at all or do any work to get there. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing is when you try to make it look so real and natural, but they have no idea the number of times I've repeated this pattern in front of people, and I'm really honing it. And it's the same same with every comic. It's you learn that pattern.
Yeah.
And you practice. Like you said, you just have to keep practicing. But my big ceiling to me was, and this is what I didn't really understand how important this was, but finding sort of my lens, sort of the, Mike Lucas, the blah, blah guy. I didn't have the blah, blah yet. I didn't have in RFL, your training program for freelancers, you call it the bat signal talent. And like, I didn't have one of those bat signal talents that a lot of comics seem to have and really are successful with. And to me, that was a real limitation, because when I got out to LA and when I got, my agents, they didn't know how to pitch me. They didn't know what I was. I was sort of like, well, he's a crazy guy who does a lot of, makes things come alive. And, but that didn't really work on TV. I mean, it did, but it didn't have the same effect on an audience as it would in a live scenario where someone is creating that in front of you. And that was sort of that I hit, where I didn't know what my blah blah was. I don't know what the blah blah guy is, and that to me is something that if you're trying to become, like, if you kind of differentiate yourself between yourself in a big pool of competitors, knowing what you are, having a focus, a lens, having a bat signal talent, having a specialty, man, that is just a key. Yeah. I didn't understand that at the time. I wish that had been more clear.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I think the reason RFL is so effective is because I'm able to draw on the pain of knowing none of this as a comic. And to be honest with you, Mike, if 25-year-old Kevin could have been met 45-year-old Kevin and been explaining these things, I would have said, man, that guy's a douche.
Yeah, right? You would have said, screw you, Baldy. Have you no idea how long my hair is? I don't care.
Wow, that's really good stuff. We'll be right back to that conversation. I want to quickly tell you about Copy Chief, the membership. The full load, the mother load. What goes on in there? You can get your copy reviewed by working pro copywriters. We do new trainings every month based on the stuff that's proven, tested, and working best in the market today. Not just copy, Facebook ads, webinars, all the stuff that you need in your funnel to optimize your sales. You're getting it in real time from the real pros inside of Copy Chief. Go to copychief.com/join and see what we got for you. Now, back to this amazing conversation. Going back to the thing about, I used to call it a hook. I think club owners would say,
exactly.
They'd say, you need a hook. And I that made me so angry because dude, you and I were both good. We would kill the room. And that to me was
that was my hook.
That was that was the golden rule. It's like, there is nothing else. I think looking back, I didn't know this, but I was scared of success, or I was scared of, like, if I try to harness this or give a name to it or make it more purposeful, I'll lose this mysterious magic that I've tapped into, like, which was horseshit, really. But everything was a routine, and so I used to make me angry, because when somebody said to me, it's like, I want to headline you, I just don't know what to tell people why they should come see you. Like, why will people, what will they remember? And to me, that meant, like, get a big belt buckle and grow a handlebar mustache. And now you got a hook. And I was like,
Cowboy Kev. Hey, Cowboy Kev, what you doing on stage? Cowboy stuff.
Exactly. It was like, I'm not
my theme, like you're a restaurant all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's like, you don't get me. But you, and so you, I think you were probably more willing to do that, but you weren't going to compromise. You were more like, all right, everybody sees me as this sort of sellable thing. You're on Jay Leno twice, right? The Tonight Show, which is the pinnacle for comics. I mean, you definitely hit that place in business where it's like, all right, from here, it either happens or it doesn't. Or, look at Brian Regan, stayed there for 15, 20 years before he started selling out theaters and stuff, but man, for you then, like, what was the moment where you were like, did you consider ways that you could go sort of more commercial and become more sellable in that way? Or were you just like, whatever that requires, I'm not willing to do?
Well, honestly, what I was looking for, what I was truly searching for, was something I could live with, a hook, a lens, a specialty that I could live with, a way to phrase what I am that would be true, but also get done what I needed to get done functionally in the business. For those club owners to be able to pitch and put a poster up and just say, he's the blah blah guy. And so, like, first I tried the pale guy from Florida was my first one. The pale guy from Florida. That was my first big hook. That was my first attempt at a lens.
That's hilarious.
I'm not kidding. I had business cards.
Wow.
Pale guy from Florida. Yeah. And so then I realized that was a little bit limiting, and it really didn't tell you much about who I was. Yeah. And then when I lost my hair to a terrible genetic accident where my mom's father gave me some genes that just didn't hold follicles well. And so I started shaving my head. So then I became the tall, bald comic.
Yeah, I remember that one. I think I have that cartoon.
Yeah. And I was just trying to I was like, I have no idea, so I'm just going to call it like it is.
Right, that's hilarious. So, like, please remember me. I saw 6 comics that. Oh, he was the tall, bald one. Yeah, he was pretty good.
Right. And I still had no clue that that didn't differentiate me. It just didn't say anything special about who I was. And and the idea that I studied at Second City and Improv Olympic, and I did the TV shows with stand up, and I've done radio with my wife. We were on CBS radio for years out in LA. And how do you say, like, oh, he's this guy? He can do a lot of different stuff. And so I was really confused. And then by the time we had babies in 2008 and the whole market crashed and we moved out of LA, I was just like, to heck with it all.
Yeah.
I decided to begin to write, because then I could start over and sort of begin this process again, which is to find that creative way to freelance yourself and to convert your mental ideas into product, whatever that means, and that's where, boy, and having RFL on my side this time, I just studied it from just knowing you. And it taught me how important it is to just begin to specialize. So, like, what are you, dude? Yeah. What are you? What are you trying to contribute, so that when the conversation comes up around that subject or that specialty, your name happens to pop in there, because people go, oh, geez, yeah, that's that guy. So, as like an NFL blog writer and writing about parenting and writing about freelancing and using humor and all that, it's sort of, I'm beginning to develop my own bat signal talent in this writing world. Where I go from there, I have no clue yet. I'm just at the beginning of it, but
writing successfully, finding a second career.
Yeah.
You and I both did like these weird no resume jobs for a while we were surviving and supporting our children and our families. And then now we've both found this thing. And it's funny because John Carlton was the first person to me to say, dude, why aren't you talking about the comedy stuff? Like, you should be blogging about that. He said, you don't realize how interesting that is to people. And he's like, then people will remember you for that. And I was like,
right.
I blocked it out. It was like, that was a different life. Nobody needs to know that,
Well, and there's a bit of pain involved when you don't achieve your dream to the level that you wanted to achieve it. Like, you and I both pictured ourselves as being, whatever your version of success was. Bill Hicks, selling out Madison Square Garden. Mine was being, Bob Newhart and Bill Cosby, the old Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby before we knew about Bill Cosby.
Yeah, I'm talking 60s Bill Cosby.
Or like Jim Carrey, I think is maybe a good one for you.
Right? Where you begin to dream of being that, and then when you don't hit that, and very few people do, like, there's a bit of disappointment, and then especially when you move on to a new dream, a new idea of what you want to accomplish. Yeah. Talking about the old dream is just kind of a drag, But. Yeah. But then I learned through you, watching you begin to expose the world to your old comedy self, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna deny that. That was a fun. I spent almost 25 years every day going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this for a living. Day after day being able to say that, and I had a blast. So, I'm glad to share anything I know about making, going from a day job to all of a sudden being a guy who books a calendar for himself and makes a living off the ideas that he has, during the course of the day. And
I think the other thing is you have to have both feet in the new world too, right? Like I didn't think about it until you just said it, but I probably wasn't ready to talk about it because, well, I'd say by the time I started actually freelancing, there's no comic part of me anymore, right?
Yeah.
But it took me a good year too to really let go. And I remember even for years after, I would watch SNL. Something about that, and that was not really my dream. I was not an actor.
Yeah.
I wanted to be really a writer. I just dreamed of being in a writing room, and how intense that was, and all the jokes flying, that collaboration. And every time that I would sit and watch SNL and that opening, and you and I both have a lot of friends who have been on that show, and I would just it's the only time I would get jealous, because I just think, man, New York City, Saturday night, you worked all week in the excitement of that show, and then the after party, and you're then some celebrities hosting, and my buddy Jim Brewer would tell me these stories about, suddenly he's on stage, he's standing next to Robert De Niro, or, it's just these amazing things. And, and that's the only thing that would sort of get me jealous. I did not miss the road. Just to focus in and make this valuable.
To someone besides our parents.
Yeah. Our goal with this conversation is who I'm thinking of today, Mike, and I know you are too, is sort of, like I said in the beginning, the person who's like on the other side of that. First of all, if you're successful, remember to share your story. Like, it is interesting to go back, and no matter what you did, and talk about lessons learned from sort of a previous life. Most of us come into entrepreneurialism as a second life kind of a thing, right?
Right. Yeah. And I love how you use in RFL that as a major strength, as opposed to something you deny or just put aside or ignore.
Yeah, it's instant credibility. And like you and I did, we tend to go, that was before. I don't want to, people see it as why don't you do that anymore? You goofed it, huh? But more so I'm thinking of, because we've been having conversations, I can't even say promoting necessarily, a new program that we're calling Escape Velocity, which is meant to get you that first gig. And because of the way we're promoting it, it's only in a PS at the end of our emails.
I love that.
What's great about it is that the only people who can come into the program are people who are compelled to read that message and hit reply and talk to us and tell us their story and answer a few questions about whether they think they're qualified or why they would want to be in this program. And man, I'm telling you, it just brings home so much about where people are and what they struggle with. Some of it's real, some of it's total head trash. And most of all, they've never been shown a plan for how this goes down and what it even looks like, or what you need to show people for them to want to give you money for your money skill.
Yeah, I remember when I first quit, my first job out of college was at AT&T doing computer programs. That was my major in college. And I remember after 2 years, that's when I quit to go do that Disney job. And when I told people I was going to quit this, at that time it was really good money and a corporate job and the security of all that to go follow my dreams. They laughed. They you could tell it, but it was really fear. Everybody was terrified of the thought of taking that chance. And nowadays, it's just a given. Like so many people are freelancing now because you just have to. Those corporate jobs aren't there anymore. Those middle class jobs that we used to have aren't there anymore. So it's basically like, hey man, if you got a skill that you're good at, you can sell that yourself if you know how to do it. The problem is, like you said, very few people teach you how to do that, and you can't afford to feed a family and to get your bills paid or whatever you got going while you're learning full time how to do something as tricky as freelancing.
Yeah, 100%. And man, I love it. They'd love to say, "You'll be back," right?
I always said that.
You'll be back.
At least you have this to fall back on.
Yeah.
Don't leave. Where are you going? Is it more fun than this?
Yeah, you're gonna miss out on Applebee's.
Oh my gosh! Right?
Bottomless Wings Wednesday. All right. Good luck, pal.
You're gonna miss out on happy hour Tuesdays through Fridays.
All right, so this is to totally flip and get tactical because I'm conscious of time. But Mike, you wrote a great article. You've been posting a lot of great stuff in Copy Chief about sort of your freelancing journey and looking back through the lens of comedy and writing the NFL blogs and all the different stuff you're doing. 5 critical things I did before quitting my day job forever.
Oh, yes.
Let's just quickly go through these 5. And so we've been having this great free form conversation. Now I'm going to put you on the hot seat and go, how quick? Right. Yeah. So number 1, take classes to learn your skill at a higher level.
Yeah, whatever you're good at already naturally, you just got to get trained professionally by somebody who's just been there and knows the ins and outs of the business and knows the ins and outs of the skill. Because there's so many things that you just don't get without the experience. And when you have somebody who's teaching you, and it's also a way to get a mentor, somebody who you look up to, and that's real important too. So you can sort of model your career and have them on your shoulder, helping you make decisions along the way.
Number 2, get a related, steady job and do lots of low-paying, related side work.
Yeah, that was important for me as a comic. That was the MGM job and the Disney job and the Universal Studios job, and a lot of times you can't do that. So you just get, you try to find a part-time job. And all these places that are possible will, believe it or not, allow you to go in there and work for free for a while, and then just to test you out. Sometimes if you're able to present yourself that way, you can even work 1 or 2 hours a week somewhere doing what you love to do and proving yourself. And sometimes that's what you got to do in the beginning.
Yeah. Bigger conversation about free work, but yeah, legit. Okay, number 3, take lots of local, low-paying freelance side gigs to increase your experience.
Yeah, that's where you just begin to start seeing what it's like to be a freelancer while you have the safety of your day job. You begin to put a calendar together. You begin to learn what it's like to negotiate on the phone and try to get those free gigs that you were doing to turn them into paying gigs. And when you begin to build up your authority and who you are and where your name starts coming up, you can start doing that a little bit easier.
Yeah, I love that. That's what I call proving the model, right?
Yep.
Number 4, compile a list of ideal starter clients and begin contacting them.
Yeah, that's the key right there. Just having any kind of clients just because you're desperate to work. A lot of freelancers who are starting out do that to themselves. And they can really prevent that hassle by just, while they're working their day job, begin to assemble that list of clients, begin to understand who is your ideal client. That's what I love about when I took the RFL, is to begin to identify not just, you have money and you want to pay me, you're an ideal client. Like that's not
right.
How it works. Right. An ideal client is someone who truly does need what you're having to offer. So there's no real sale going on. There's just an exchange of value.
Yeah. Someone wrote back in one of those responses that they don't want to have to talk to anybody who doesn't appreciate and value copy, which is really important criteria, especially in copywriting.
Yeah. If you're a copywriter, you don't want a client who belittles copywriting and is just doing you a favor by paying you, because there's no way that relationship is going to go a long way.
If they don't understand the difference between copy and content, that's a bad place to start. Yeah. All right. Number 5. This is a great one. Save every extra penny and create a big pile of FU money.
Boy, that was really important. And, everyone's idea of what a big pile of FU money is different, but they always say, like, have 6 months of livable money, like where you can survive on your own with no job or no income for 6 months, and have that saved up. And it's not as hard as you think, but it involves sacrifice. You got to not, get that extra cup of coffee at Starbucks. You got to not go out to eat 3 or 4 times a week. You got to begin to understand and prioritize that freelancing is going to be your life. It is a huge commitment to a way of life. It's not just a job anymore. You're dedicating yourself to a craft, and you're trying to become a specialist in this thing so that your name comes up whenever that subject is mentioned. And so having a big pile of money saved so that you can begin and do it without worry, so you can begin to collect your ideal clients without needing them. Boy, that's just key.
Man, it's so critical. I remember times when I would hit a dip and I'd have to say 3 times before I get on a prospect call, I don't need this gig. I don't need this. Because if they hear the desperation in your voice, man, you're in trouble, right?
Right. And then there's another little guy on your shoulder. Yes, you do, Kev. You got to eat. You got to do that. And then it's that battle, right? You're trying to battle with fear.
Yeah, because if you can have a little stockpile to keep you from the swings, like Mike said, you just will never have to compromise or move out of fear or desperation. And man, that means you can always be creating a forward momentum and not just stabilizing, momentum. And that's the key. Mike, brother, wow, man, this was fun. I can't believe how fast 35 minutes went by.
What a blast.
I hope everybody enjoyed this. You're definitely going to be hearing more from us. Mike, where do people go read your stuff? Like, where's Mike Lukas living these days?
Well, you can go to my blog site, and that's mikelukas.com.
Lukas.
Lukas. That's the important thing to remember with my last name. I lose so many people.
Yeah, with the C.
Yeah, with the C. Everyone, that's the way.
Was Tall Bald Writer not available? Did you check that URL?
Softball writer. Yeah. Oh man. But this one, my site's called American Humanist Humorist, and it's just I do a lot of blog articles just about life, in America, and sort of take a humorous approach to parenting and to socializing and freelancing. And then I also write NFL blogs for a site called Dog Pound Daily. When we talk about the Cleveland Browns, my NFL team. And then I also write for a site called World Sports Network, and we do a lot of NFL work in terms of the new gambling laws. And we talk about all the odds and predictions of all the different games and such.
Awesome. Love it, man. You spread out but dialing in. You've been a great presence in Copy Chief, and it's only going to get better, man. I appreciate you. And like I said, we'll be doing this again soon. Mike Lukas, everybody. Let's hear it for Mike Lukas. Copy Chief Radio. Copy Chief Radio.